Hey, how you doing? So I don't know if you've heard it, like if you've been listening or watching through your feed or whatever you may be scrolling through. I'm sure you've heard about like Charleston White and Ti recently, and I just been listening to the commentary, and it's just been somewhat entertaining to say the least, and very much like, oh wow, because it's just like I ain't gonna lie, Charleston White, he's a character, like he's a whole character. Like the man is a comedian, he's funny as hell, but at the same time he's like very blunt. And I think if you ever knew somebody like who was just like that old school kind of like they don't give a fuck, like they just say whatever's on their mind, and when they say it, it comes off very like harsh and it comes off very brutal, but there's like truth behind it, like you know what I'm saying? There's like honesty in that brutality, if that makes sense. And I think Charleston White is one of those people where he just grew up like this is what it is, this is what it's not, and like we're gonna stop faking the funk and we're gonna be real about this shit, and that's just it. Like he don't really want to go like around and like let's dance around it and like dance around the topic. Like he's very just straightforward and like he wants to go like for the blow. Like we've been tolerating this shit for too long. Like it's just time for us to speak up right now. And I think that's the kind of like move he's on. So like even though he's on this move, I think what happens is that like as with a lot of people, delivery. And he is very like crass and he's very like okay, he uses a lot of profanity, you know what I mean? He's very vulgar in a kind of way, if you want to be like real about it, and nobody could deny that. So in that, and if you hear the sirens again, apologize. If what I was saying was that like because of his vulgarity and the way he approaches the situation, a lot of people get turned off. A lot of people like lose the message, and when I say a lot of people, so if you listen to a couple of my episodes, you probably hear sirens a lot, and it's funny how much you don't notice those things until you actually have to record, and you think like your space is so quiet and how often something actually occurs. So it's been quite like a learning experience. But to continue, what I was saying was that with a lot of people, uh, like as far when I say a lot of people, I mean the people he's meaning to reach, the people who needs to hear the message. That sometimes they're taking it more offense than they should be taking it in as a message. And I think that's what's happening right now with Ti and Charleston White. And Ti, for whatever reason, felt like he's like the speaker for Black people. He has become the like the prophet. He has become like the one that we go to. Our new MLK, I guess, in some kind of way, reason or rhyme. I'm not sure when that happened or when he started feeling that way. And I know his lives make you feel like just because he jumps into the topic means that he wants to be heard, but sometimes people aren't really asking. No, like people ain't asking you, Ti. I don't know if you know that people ain't asking you. It's all right. You can sit down. You're a rapper. You know what I mean? Like you don't know much more than us. Like thank you. And I mean, I guess you could say that for myself too. But I think that because he put himself on like this pedestal, he feel like okay, we are supposed to protect him because he's like one of our treasures. Like you would treasure like for like certain songs. You know what I mean? If you want to be a real, that's what made you was like a hood anthems and things like that. Like that's what made you a treasure to us if you want to keep it all the way a buck. And I'm sure he's done plenty of work and things like that in Atlanta or in Georgia. And I don't want to take that away from him. But as far as like what you present to the public, and just like as the entity who is Ti, you got to be real on a certain level. So I think too with his son now King, I feel like as a parent, and I am a parent, so I can say that. So, not saying that I can say this, but I will say this. There is a responsibility that you have with your child. And there are certain conversations, especially as a father and a son, there are conversations that regardless if you grew up a certain way, you want to make them better than you. You don't want to let them repeat your mistakes. You don't want to uh, teach them in a way to do like you. You want to teach them to do better than you. You want to make sure that they learn from the mistakes that you went through. You want to make sure that they can adapt, well in this world and that they present themselves in the best light that they can possibly be, especially because you know that they're carrying not only their name, but the family name, and they represent an entity as a, as far as like the family and everything is concerned. And that should be a concern for Ti as well. So yeah, if he wants to portray like the he wants to do the rap thing or whatever, whatever, but there should be a certain humbleness that comes with it, whether you want to accept it or not. And I understand that they could be like hip hop royalty, quote unquote to say, and but that doesn't mean that you get to just do what you want because I feel like no matter what, and this goes back to like with all these people online just begging or people online thinking they're like icons and people online where this online personas and just being famous quote unquote, and I want let me stop saying quote unquote, but just being famous or like well known or popular has definitely put it where like oh you're not supposed to be criticized, and like no, if anything, because you choose to put yourself out there, you have to know that you will be criticized even harder. You get what I'm saying? And it's just like you have to be able to take accountability, and you have to be able to take a step back and be like, you know what? Maybe I need to have a conversation. And his approach with Charleston White could have been different too, because Charleston White did call him like his son all kind of bitches and all kind of stuff. So I mean, like, yeah, it's a little disrespectful. So you're like, oh goddamn, like, you know what I mean? Like Charleston, please. But I think sometimes too, like, you have to, how sometimes like people need to hear the message in a certain way in order for it to be heard. But I think the target was missed, with Charleston. But I don't think he's I think he's trying to say like it's time for us to step it up. As a people, as a race, as a everything. Just like it's time to step it up and like stop allowing certain things to like happen. Like the adults, especially parents, take responsibility for your kids. You know what I mean? Like we have to be able to say like no, like stop blaming other people and stop being like okay, and even these, and if you're gonna with these kids, if they want to live a certain lifestyle, understand what that means. You know what I mean? It does mean, you have to deal with cops. It does mean that not everybody's going to be like, I want to shoot back or whatever. And sometimes it's just like, the prison lifestyle, how you being set up for that, and how you destroying not only yourself but the community too when you do certain things. And I think the bigger conversations what is important, and Ti has definitely missed that. Again, as a parent, I could see him being like, yo, hold up, you're not talking about my child like that, so I really don't want to hear nothing you have to say. Respectable, you know what I mean? Yeah, you can't knock it. But I also want to make sure it's clear, like Ti also needs to understand that the conversation does need to be had with his son, and be like, you know what? Because we are public figures, there will be public opinion, and in some way degree, like not to say like you should always care what people think, but especially if you are doing wrong, especially if your son is approaching grown people and talking grown things and telling people certain things, he also has to make sure that he could back it up, because you too will fall responsible for that. So don't forget about that aspect too. And I think Ti has to make sure he understands that aspect. And Charleston White is just basically like, listen, if ain't nobody gonna say it, I'ma say it. And that's what makes it funny. And I think he was saying Ti was complaining that nobody supported him, and he felt like that all these years. And like I said before, like nobody asked you, Ti. Sorry to say, nobody asked you. And at the same time, like you got to check your boy. At a certain point, because he's getting older now. He's not. He's 18 and older. You could get you're adult now. You don't want to be you preach all these things, so why are you not then exemplifying it in within your own family and being that figure that you want him to be? Why are you not having those conversations? Why are you not addressing those parts of it? And stop feeling like we have to jump in for you just because you chose to speak out. You know what I mean? It doesn't work like that. That's not how it works. But yeah, I just wanted to address that a little bit and talk about that, because I think it's quite entertaining. And like I said, I'm not saying Charleston is right in everything he says. I mean, because sometimes the way he says it is kind of crazy, and you being on the receiving end, you might feel away too. I have to, I can at least acknowledge that. But the same way, I do get the message, and it is a time where we do need to step it up a little bit. Not just blame it on like the youth, or the youth blame it on the adults. It's like we all got to start coming together and realizing like, yo, we got to get this shit right. So I hope you enjoy this episode, and I'll see you next time.